This is the shot that got us serious about bare shaft tuning our bows and nock tuning every single arrow. We'll talk more about it and show you how we do it. Stick with us. On one of our bow hunting trips, one of my business partners, Josh, was able to take a whitetail, but it was not without a little bit of drama. As you can see in the video, there was some serious corkscrew action on his arrow that you don't really want to see. The fletchings thankfully did their job, but it really got us thinking strongly about bare shaft tuning, about nock tuning our arrows, and what we had taken for granted up to that point. We were reminded of an important lesson on this hunt, that no one wants that arrow to fly better than the person that's releasing it. And so as good as your bow shop is, and we have some great bow shops in our area, the truth is that they can get your bow in center shot, they can get your bow as tuned as they can get it, but the reality is the person working on your bow does not shoot your bow like you do. They don't release the arrow like you do, they don't grip the bow like you do, and so there's a lot of human error that can be involved. And so what we wanted to do is to learn for ourselves how to get those arrow shafts and that bow tuned as good as possible, so that when we release that arrow, the fletchings that are doing the work don't have much work to do, and so that we can be ensured with as straight of an arrow flight as possible. See if this sounds familiar. Deer season's coming up. You know you need to get out and shoot your bow, but you just don't have the time. Things are happening with work, with your family. You don't get in the reps that you need to. The next thing you know, deer season's here. You're in a deer stand. Mr. Big walks by. You let an arrow fly. You either miss, or that arrow does not do exactly what you thought it was going to do, and you make a bad shot on that animal. These are the reasons why we have found that bare shaft paper tuning your arrows are so important, because we've been there. And if you haven't been there, maybe you know people, but we want that arrow to fly as straight as possible. Now, as we show you this bare shaft tuning process, we're going to assume some things. We're going to assume that your bow is already in center shot, and we're going to assume that you already have the properly spined arrows. I'm shooting a Sirius 300 spine. That's what works well with my setup. And so we're going to assume those things as we show you the process. Now, here's what we want for you to know. We are not trying to argue for or against arrow wraps. Many of you got on the nock tuning and paper tuning bare shaft process by watching the Ranch Fairy. Troy Fowler is a great guy. We've had some good conversations with him and love what he does. And in fact, that's how we got started on this process of increasing FOC, by watching some of his content. Great guy, but he'll tell you, he is not a arrow wrap guy. He is not for anything that adds extra tail weight, and we totally get that and understand why. What we're saying is, we found that in the process of bare shaft and paper tuning, it can be very tedious when you're having to turn the nock and figure out where the stiffest part of the spine is if you don't have a spine tester. And so we just thought we would come up with a way to make that process a little bit better, so that you can easily reference which parts of the shaft are tuning better as far as through paper, and a way to be able to indicate which arrow you're working on, so that you can reference that for those of you who like to be more detailed in the process. Okay, so I'm getting ready to shoot this bare shaft through paper, and so you can see I have my lighted nock, the opening in the lighted nock there lined up with the first number on the in-tune arrow wrap. So we're going to just start with number 1, and we'll slowly dial that nock around to the various numbers and see how those numbers shoot through paper, and then we'll mark them on the paper, and then we'll be able to go back and look and see which position had the best bullet hole, or closest to a bullet hole, when we're done. And that is where we will mark. We'll put a little Sharpie mark on whatever number shoots the best, and that'll be our stiff spine part of the arrow, and we'll make sure that we fletch our arrow so that that position is facing up when we shoot. Okay, let's take a look at our paper tune results. So you can see right here, number 1 right there. It's a pretty bad nock left hair, maybe a little bit of hand torque going on there, because number 2 was not near as bad, but number 1, not looking too good. Number 2 was better, for sure. Number 3, we got a nock left hair. Now number 4, things start cleaning up. And then you can see number 5. But number 6 is hard to beat right there. That's a bullet hole. And then as we went on to number 7, it started to get out of line again, and then there you can see number 8. So I think what we can deduce from this paper tune right here is that number 6 is our best result. And so that's where we're gonna mark that arrow shaft. Okay, so you've seen that we have bare shaft paper tuned this arrow, and we have found from our results in the paper, like we've already seen, that it shoots best on number 6. And so I've got that nock lined up with number 6, and I'm just gonna make a little mark here with a Sharpie on number 6. And that way I know when I shoot this arrow, I want the top of that nock opening right there lined up with number 6. And I also want to fletch this arrow. And in my case, I need the fletch pointing up to clear my rest. And so I want to make sure that I fletch my arrow in such a way so that that nock vein pointing up is fletched along that number 6 right there. So that's very important to make sure if you're fletching your own arrows that you make sure you fletch that arrow with the fletch in the right place in regards to where that bare shaft shoots best. So for me it's number 6, and I'll make sure I fletching up right here on number 6. Now I know some of you may need to have your fletchings turned in a different way in order to clear cables, or depending on what type of rest you have. So you just want to make sure that wherever that bare shaft shoots best, so in this case on number 6, that stays pointing up. It may not be that you need your vein right along number 6 like I do. You may need that fletch right over here. You just want to make sure that when you shoot that this mark right here, which we think is the stiffest part of the spine, pointing up, you want to make sure that that mark is pointing up when you shoot. So maybe you're still asking, why are you so worried about all this bare shaft paper tuning stuff? That's what the fletchings are for, to correct arrow flight. That's true. But if you've bow hunted long enough, you know that a lot of things can happen when you release that arrow. Maybe your stance wasn't exactly right. Maybe you were wearing baggy clothing and the string slaps your sleeve when you release that arrow. Maybe you've got hand torque when you release that arrow. The fletchings will help correct that shaft, but you want them to have to correct as little as possible. Would you rather your fletchings be correcting this, or would you rather the fletchings be correcting this? I'm choosing option 2 because I want this arrow to have as good a chance as possible of making an ethical impact on that animal, so that I can have the best chance possible of recovering that animal. That's why we think this is important. It's real life learning, and we've had to learn those lessons the hard way. So we hope you've learned something in this video about nock tuning through paper. If you're interested in the Intune arrow wraps, you can get those on our website at n1outdoors.com. We'll leave the link for those below. Please also leave us a comment, like the video, share it with people who you think might be interested. We hope you have a great upcoming deer season. And remember, where the moments happen, we'll meet you there. We'll see you next time.